In the Shade of the Qur'an by Sayyid Qutb, Surah 87, Surah Al-A'la, the Most High.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Praise the name of your Lord, the Most High, who creates and proportions well, who determines and guides, who brings forth the pasturage, and turns it into withered grass. We shall teach you to read, and you shall not forget, save what Allah wills. He knows what is manifest and what is kept hidden. And we shall smooth your way to perfect ease. Give warning, therefore, if warning is of use, he who fears Allah will heed it, but the most wretched will turn aside from it. He shall be cast into the greatest fire, in which he shall neither die nor live. Prosperous is he who purifies himself and glorifies the name of his Lord and praise. Yet you prefer this present life, while the life to come is better and longer lasting. All this is surely written in earlier scriptures, the scriptures of Abraham and Moses. Imam Ahmad Hanbal has transmitted on the authority of Ali, the Prophet's cousin and companion, that the Prophet used to love this surah. The famous traditionalist Muslim has also transmitted that the Prophet used to read this surah and Surah 86, the enveloper, in the prayers of Islamic festivals and in Friday prayers. If one of the festival fell on a Friday, the Prophet would be sure to read these two surahs in the prayers. The Prophet is right to love this surah, as it turns the whole universe into a temple whose four corners echo the praises and glorification of his Lord, the Most High. Praise the name of your Lord, the Most High, who creates and proportions well, who determines and guides, who brings forth the pasturage, and turns it into withered grass. The rhythm of the surah, characterized by the long vowels with which each of its verses ends, imparts a feeling of the praises echoed everywhere in the universe. The Prophet is also right to love this surah, as it brings him good news, as Allah charges him with the double task of conveying his message and warning people. He promises him, "We shall teach you to read, and you shall not forget, save what Allah wills. He knows what is manifest and what is kept hidden, and we shall smooth your way to to perfect ease. Therefore, give warning if warning is of use. So Allah takes upon himself the responsibility of making his messenger not forget anything of the Qur'an. He also promises that his path will be smooth in all his affairs, whether they are personal or concern his message. This is certainly a great favor. Again, the Prophet is right to love this surah as it concludes the basic ingredient of the Islamic concept of life and existence: the unity of Allah, the Creator, the reality of divine revelation, and the reality of reward and punishment in the life to come. The surah also affirms that these basic principles have well-established roots in the earlier divine messages. All this is surely written in early scriptures, the scriptures of Abraham and Moses. All this is in addition to the impression it imparts of the easy nature of the Islamic ideology, the messenger who conveys it, and the nation it builds. Praise the name of your Lord, the Most High, who creates and proportions well, who determines and guides, who brings forth the pasturage and turns it into withered grass. The surah opens with an order to praise the Lord, which means to glorify him, recognize his supremacy and infallibility in everything, and remember his divine attributes. It is much more than verbal repetition of the phrase Subhanallah or praise be to Allah. It is a genuine feeling of the sublimity of these attributes. As the surah inspires one with the splendor of a life based on constant appreciation of the divine attributes, it creates within one a feeling which is very real and very difficult to describe at the same time. The two immediately presented attributes are Lordship and Highness. The Lord of the Arabic equivalent, Rabb, is the one who tends and nurtures. The denotations of this attribute fit very well with the general atmosphere of the surah, its glad tidings and easy rhythm. The Highness attributes prompt one to look up to endless horizons. Having a genuinely vivid feeling of this attribute is indeed the essential purpose of praising Allah and glorifying Him. The surah opens with an order addressed by Allah to the Prophet in the first instance. Praise the name of your Lord, the Most High. The order is given with an air of friendliness and compassion almost beyond description. Whenever the Prophet read this surah, he used to fulfill this order promptly by stopping after the first verse to say, "All praise be to my Lord the Most High." Thus, he will receive the order, carry it out promptly, and read on. When this surah was revealed, the Prophet told the Muslims to fulfill the divine order as they prostrate themselves in their daily prayers. Similarly, he told them to carry out the other order of praise the name of your Lord, the Most Great, as they bow in their prayers. These praises, warm with life, have been included in the prayers as a direct response to a direct order, or more precisely, to a direct permission. For Allah's permission to His servants to praise Him is one of His favors He has bestowed on them. It is a permission to them to be in contact with Him in a manner, given their limited abilities, they can appreciate. He, out of His grace, has permitted them to do this so that they may know Him and His attribute as best they can. Praise the name of your Lord, the Most High, who creates and proportions well, who determines and guides. Everything Allah has created is well proportioned and perfected. Every creature is assigned its own role and given guidance so that it may know its role and play it. It is told the purpose of its creation, given what it needs for sustenance, and guided to it. This is clearly visible in everything around us, big or small, important or trivial. For everything is well perfected and guided to fulfill the purpose of its creation as it can be fulfilled best. All things are also collectively perfected so that they may fulfill their collective role. The single atom is well balanced between its electrons and protons to the same degree as the solar system. Its sun, planets, and satellites are well balanced. Each of the two knows the way it is assigned to travel and fulfill its role. The single living cell is also perfect and well equipped to do everything it is asked to do, in the same measure as the most advanced and complex species. This perfect balance in the individual and the collective sense is easily noticeable in every one of numerous kinds of creation that fill the gap between the single atom and the solar system, or between the single cell and the most advanced living creature. This basic fact, evidenced by everything in the universe, is well recognized by the human heart as it contemplates what is in the universe. This sort of inspiration and recognition is within the reach of every man in every age, regardless of his standard of education. All that is required for it is an open mind which contemplates and responds. Increased knowledge then endorses and emphasizes with individual example what inspiration has already proven with the first glance. The results of study and research endorse within their limited scope this basic truth which applies to everything in the universe. The American scientist A. Chrissy Morrison, head of the Science Academy in New York, says in his book, "Man does not stand alone. Birds have the homing instinct. The robin that nested at your door may go south in the autumn, but will come back to his old nest the next spring. In September, flocks of many of our birds fly south often over 1,000 miles of open seas. But they do not lose their way. The homing pigeon, confused by new sounds on a long journey in a closed box, circles for a moment, then heads almost unerringly for home. The bee finds its hive while the wind waving the grasses and trees blocks out every visible guide to its whereabouts. The honeybee workers make chambers of different size in the comb used for breeding. Small chambers are constructed for the workers, larger ones for the drones, and special chambers for the prospective queens. The queen bee lays unfertilized eggs in the cell designed for males, but lay fertilized eggs in the proper chamber for the female workers and the possible queen. One of the water spiders fashions a balloon-shaped nest of cobweb filaments and attaches it to some object underwater. Then she ingeniously entangles an air bubble to the hairs of her underbody, carries it into the water, and releases it under the nest. This performance is repeated until the nest is inflated. When she proceeds to bring forth and raise her young safe from attack by air, here we have a synthesis of the web, engineering, construction, and aeronautics. Chance perhaps, but that still leaves the spider unexplained. The young salmon spends years at sea, then comes back to his own river, and what is more, he travels up the side of the river into which he flows, the tributary in which he was born. The laws of the states on one side of the dividing stream may be strict and the other side not, but these laws affect only the fish which may be said to belong to each other, to each side. What brings them back so definitely? If a salmon goes up a river and is transferred to another tributary, he will at once realize he is not in the right tributary and will fight his way down to the mainstream and then turn up against the current to finish his destiny. A female moth placed in your attic by the open window will send out some subtle signal. Over an unbelievable area, the male moths of the same species will catch the message and respond in spite of your attempt to produce laboratory orders to disconcert them. Has the little creature a broadcasting station, and has the male moth a mental radio set beside its antennae? Does she shake the ether and thus catch the vibration? The cricket rubs its legs or wings together, and on a still night can be heard half a mile away. It shakes 600 tons of air and calls its mate. Vegetation makes subtle use of involuntary agents to carry on its existence. Insects to carry pollen from flower to flower, and the winds and everything that flies or walks to distribute seed. At last, vegetation has trapped masterful man. He has improved nature, and she generously rewarded him. But he has multiplied so prodigiously that he is now chained to the plough. He must now sow, reap and store, breed and crossbreed, prune and graft. Should he neglect this task, starvation would be his lord. Civilization would crumble, and the earth returns to her pristine state. Many animals are like a lobster, which, having lost a claw, will by some re-stimulation of the cells and the reactivation of the genes discover that a part of the body is missing and restore it. When the work is complete, the cells stop working, or in some way they know it is quitting time. A freshwater polyp divided into half can reform itself out of one of this half. Cut off an angleworm's head and he will soon create a new one. An acorn falls to the ground, its tough brown shell holds it safe. It rolls into some earthly crevice. In the spring, the germ awakes, the shell bursts, food is provided by the egg-like kernel in which the genes were hidden. They send roots into the earth, and behold a sprout, a sapling, and in years a tree. The germ with its gene has multiplied by trillions and made the trunk, bark, and every leaf and acorn identified with that of the oak which gave its birth. For hundreds of years, in each of the countless acorns is preserved the exact arrangement of atoms that produced the first oak. The first oak trees millions of years ago. The author says in another chapter of his book, every cell that is produced in any living creatures must adapt itself to be part of the flesh, to sacrifice itself as part of the skin, which will soon be worn off. It must deposit the animal of teeth, produce the transparent liquid in an eye, or become a nose or an ear. Each cell must then adapt itself in shape and every other characteristic necessary to fulfill its function. It is hard to think of a cell as right-handed or left-handed, but one becomes part of a right ear, the other becomes part of the left ear. Some crystals that are chemically identical turns the rays of light to the left, others to the right. There seems to be such a tendency in the cells. In the exact place where they belong, they become a part of the right ear or the left ear, and your two ears are opposite each other on your head, and not as in the case of a cricket on your elbows. Their curves are opposite, and when complete, they are so much alike you cannot tell them apart. Hundreds of thousands of cells seem impelled to do the right thing at the right time in the right place. True, there must be a creator who guides these and other creatures, big and small. He is the one who creates and proportions well, who determines and guides. The example we have quoted above are but few of the large number of remarkable aspects science has recorded in the worlds of plants, insects, birds, and animals. But all these aspects reflect only a part of the import of the two verses, who creates and proportions well, who determines and guides. For our knowledge covers only a scanty part of what is in the visible universe, beyond which extend the whole world of which we know nothing about, apart from the few hints Allah has chosen to drop to us as befits our limited abilities. Having fired such a great volley of praises to Allah to resound in even the remotest corners of the universe, the surah complements with an inspiring touch from the realm of plants, who brings forth the pasturage, then turns it into withered grass. The pasturage, as used here, refers to all plants. Every plant is suitable for one sort of species or another. The term then has a much wider sense than the familiar pastures where cattle feed. Allah has created this planet and provided on it enough food to nourish every single living creature which walks, flies, or hides itself underground. The pasturage is green when it first shoots forth, but it withers away and blackens. It may be used for feeding when green, after it blackens and withers, or in between. Thus, it is useful in every condition, and it serves a purpose according to the elaborate plannings of the one who creates, proportions, determines, and guides. The reference here to the life of plants carries also an implicit connotation that all plants are reaped and harvested. Similarly, every living being will come to its appointed end. This connotation fits in well with the reference to the toil of man. Yet, you prefer this present life, while the life to come is better and more lasting. This life is a pasture which comes to its end when it withers away and blackens, while the life to come is the one which lasts. As the beginning of the surah opens up this limitless horizon, it provides a framework for the fundamental facts tackled in this surah to be related to the whole universe. The framework is remarkably suitable. It is perfectly harmonious with the atmosphere of the surah, its rhythm, and its shade of meaning. The surah then gives the Prophet and the Muslim nation in general a very welcome tiding. We shall teach you to read, and you shall not forget, save what Allah wills. He knows what is manifest and what is kept hidden, and we shall smooth your way to perfect ease. Give warning, therefore, if warning is of use. The glad tidings start with sparing the Prophet the trouble of memorizing the Qur'an. All he needs to do is to read as he is taught, and Allah will ensure that he will never forget any part of it. We shall teach you to read, and you shall not forget. So, keen to keep the Quran in his memory, the Prophet used to repeat it after Jibreel, the angel, had come down with it to him. He felt that if it was part of his responsibility to keep it registered in his memory, but Allah decided that he would look after this task. The tiding is also a happy one for the Islamic nation, since it is a reassurance that the faith the Prophet preaches is authentic. It is from Allah, and he looks after it. This is part of Allah's grace. It shows how weighty the questions of priority of faith is in his scale. Every time the Quran states a definite promise or a constant law, it follows it with a statement implying that the divine will is free of all limitation and restriction, even those based on a promise from Allah or a law of His. for his will is absolute beyond any such promise or law. Here the Surah emphasizes this principle after the promise made to the Prophet that he will never forget anything of the Qur'an, save what Allah wills. The two are complementary in the sense that the promise is within the divine will, so we look forward to Allah's fulfillment of what He has willed to promise. He knows what is manifest and what is hidden. This is stated here by way of giving a reason for all that has passed, teaching to read, freedom from forgetfulness, and the exception made to that. Everything is decided according to the wisdom of the one who knows the secret and the manifest. He views everything from all angles and makes his decision on the basis of his unfailing knowledge. Then follows another tiding, happy and all-embracing, and we shall smooth your way to perfect ease. This is a glad tiding for the Prophet personally and for the Islamic nation at large. It is furthermore a statement of the nature of Islam, its role in human life and in the universe. This verse, which is rendered in Arabic, is no more than two words, state one of the most fundamental principles of faith and existence. It provides a link between the nature of the Prophet, the nature of Islam, and that of the whole universe. It is a universe created by Allah with ease. It follows His appointed way with ease and draws nearer its final objective with ease. Thus, it is inspiration lighting limitless horizon. If Allah smooths a certain person's path, he finds ease in everything in his life, for he will move along his way to Allah with the universe, which is characterized by its harmony of construction, movement, and direction. Hence, he does not clash with those who digress, for these are of no importance compared with the vast universe. Ease will pervade his whole life. It will be evident in his hand, tongue, movement, work, concepts, way of thinking, and conducting all affairs and tackling all matters, ease with himself and with others as well. His wife, Aisha, reports that whenever faced with a choice, the Prophet will always choose the easier of the two alternatives. She also reports, whenever the Prophet was alone with his family at home, he was the easiest of men, always smiling and laughing. Al-Bukhari has also transmitted, a maidservant would take the Prophet by the hand and lead him wherever she wished. His guidance in matters of clothes, food, household furniture, and other matters of day-to-day life points to a preference for what is easy. Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah speaks in his book Za'ad al-Ma'ad of the Prophet's guidance in matters of dress. He had a turban which he gave to Ali as a gift, but he used to wear it over a cap. But he also wore either the turbans or the cap separately. When he wore the turban, however, he used to leave the end parts of it hanging between his shoulders. This has been transmitted by Muslim in his books of authentic tradition on the authority of Omar ibn Harith, who said, I saw the Prophet speaking on the platform of the mosque, wearing a black turban with its end hanging between his shoulders. Muslim has also transmitted on the authority of Jabir ibn Abdullah that the Prophet was wearing a black turban when he entered Mecca, but nothing is mentioned here about his leaving its end part hanging. This signifies that the Prophet did not always leave the tail of his turban hanging between his shoulders. It also said that the Prophet entered Mecca wearing his battle dress with a helmet on his head, which suggests that he used to wear what suited the occasion. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah says in another chapter of his book, the best method, it is true, is that followed by the Prophet and which he encouraged his companion to adopt. His guidance regarding dress is, in short, that He used to wear whatever was available, whether woolens or cotton or other types of material. He used Yemeni gowns and had a green gown. He also used different types of dress such as overcoat, long dress, shirts, trousers, top gowns, sandals and shoes. He left the end of his turban hanging between his shoulders on occasion and did not do so on other occasions. On the Prophet's guidance regarding food, the author said, the Prophet never refused what was available at home, and nor did he ever go out of his way to get what was not. He would eat whatever was served of good food, and he would never cited any sort of food whatsoever. If he did not like something, he would simply not eat it, but would not forbid it. An example of his attitude is a case of dove, which he used not to eat, but he did not forbid others eating it. On the contrary, he watched others eating it at his own table. He liked sweets and honey. He used to eat dates, fresh and preserved, drank milk, pure and mixed, added water to the ice and honey, and drank dates drink. He also eat kazira, which is a thick soup made of milk and flour. He ate cucumber with fresh dates, butter, dates with bread with vinegar, dried meat, a dish called dabba, which was one of his favorite dishes, boiled meat, rice, and meat cooked with fat, cheese, bread with oil, watermelon, and fresh dates, and he used to like dates cooked with butter. In short, he never refused good food, and nor did he go to any trouble to get it. His guidance was to eat what was available. If he did not have anything to eat, he would simply go hungry, etc. and etc. The author also speaks of the Prophet's guidance concerning sleep and wakefulness. He used to sleep sometimes on a mattress, sometimes on a simple animal skin. Occasionally, he would sleep on a rough mat or on the cold earth with nothing under him, or on a bed, perhaps a plain bed, and perhaps covered with a black bedspread. The Prophet's tradition urging the adoption of an easy, gentle and tolerant attitude in all matters, especially those which concern religious duties, are numerous. From among those we may quote, "This religion is of an easy nature. Anyone who pulls hard against it shall be the loser," transmitted by Al-Bukhari. "Do not be hard on yourself, lest it should be made hard for you. A former nation chose to be hard, and it was made harsher for them," transmitted by Abu Dawood. "A rider driving hard neither reaches his destination nor keeps his transport," transmitted by Al-Bukhari. "Make it easy, not difficult for others," transmitted by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Concerning social dealings, the Prophet says, "May Allah have mercy on any person who is tolerant when he buys, sells and asks for his rights," transmitted by Al-Bukhari. "A believer is gentle and friendly," transmitted by Al-Bahaki. "A believer gets on well with others and is easy to get on well with," transmitted by Al-Darakuni. "The type of man Allah dislikes most is the quarrelsome one who does not budge," transmitted by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. One of the highly significant features of his character is that he hated hardness even in names and physical features. This shows how Allah has molded his nature and smoothed even his temperament. Sayyid ibn al-Musayyib reports that the Prophet asked his father what was his name. Al-Musayyib was his name. He answered, "Hazan," which means rough and difficult. The Prophet said, "No, you are Sal, plain and easy." The man said, "I will never change a name given to me by my father." Sayyid comment, "As a result, we have always had a trace of hardness in our characters," transmitted by Al-Bukhari. Ibn Umar reports that the Prophet changed the name of a woman from Asiya, which means disobedient, to Jamila, pretty, transmitted by Muslim. He also said, it is part of kindness to receive your brother with a smiling face, transmitted by Al-Tirmizi. Thus we realize how refined and gentle the Prophet was, to dislike even names and features which smack of roughness, and to try to substitute for them what related to gentility and tolerance. The life story of the Prophet is composed of pages of gentility, ease, tolerance, and understanding in all affairs. Let us quote here an incident which reveals his method of dealing with people of difficult temperament. Once a Bedouin came to the Prophet asking for something. The Prophet granted his request and then said, "Have I treated you well?" The Bedouin said, "No, and you have not been kind either." The Muslim with the Prophet felt very angry and wanted to punish the man. The Prophet, however, motioned them to leave him alone. He then went into his house, sent for the man, and gave him something over and above his original request. He then asked him, "Have I treated you well?" The man said, "Yes, indeed. May Allah reward you well, for you are a kind, for a good kinsman and a good tribesman." The Prophet then said to him, "When you said what you said, you made my companion feel angry with you. You like to tell them what you have just told me, so that they would have nothing against you." The man said, "I will." The following day he came, and the Prophet said, "This Bedouin said yesterday what you have heard. We gave him more, and he claims now that he is satisfied. Is that so?" The Bedouin said, "Yes, indeed. May Allah reward you well, for you are a good kinsman and a good tribesman." The Prophet then said to his companion, "My affair with this Bedouin is similar to that of a man who had a she-camel which ran loose. Other people rushed to try to catch her, but they managed only to make her run wild. The owner then appealed to them to let him alone with his she-camel, as he was gentler to her and knew her temperament. The owner then went towards her, having picked something to feed her with. He approached her gently until she responded and sat down. He then saddled her and mounted her back. Had I left you alone when the man said what he said, you would probably have killed him and would have gone to hell." So gentle, simple, and compassionate was the Prophet's attitude towards any person of rough nature. Example of this attitude abounds in the record of his life. These examples are practical manifestation of how his path has been smooth for him to achieve perfect ease in every aspect of life. He had been given a tolerant, understanding nature so that he might carry out his mission as Allah's messenger to mankind. In this way, his nature and the nature of Islam, the message he carried and conveyed, are alike. He was able, with Allah's grace, to fulfill the great task with which he had been entrusted. For when his path was smooth, the heavy burdens of his mission become an enjoyable sport. The Qur'an describes Muhammad, Allah's messenger, as a source of mercy to humanity, who has come to relieve people of the burden imposed on them by reason of their being too hard against themselves. We have sent you forth only as a mercy to mankind. Those who follow the messenger of the Prophet, who can neither read nor write, whom they shall find described in the Torah and the Gospel. He will enjoin upon them what is right and forbid them what is evil. He will make all good things lawful to them and prohibit all that is foul. He will relieve them of their burdens and the shackles that weigh upon them. The Quran also describes the message of the Prophet, the message the Prophet has delivered in statement of like import. We have made the Quran easy for warning, but will anyone take heed? And in another surah, He has laid on you no hardship in the observance of your religion, And another one, Allah does not wish to burden you who seeks only to purify. He seeks only to purify you. Allah does not charge a soul with more than its capacity. The message of Islam is made easy for people to follow, since it takes into consideration the limitations of people to follow. Since it takes into consideration the limitations of human abilities. It imposes no burdens which are too heavy. The easy nature of the religion of Islam is readily identifiable in its spirits as well as in its commandment. Follow the upright nature Allah has endowed mankind with. When we look carefully through this religion, we find that care has been taken to make it easy for men to follow without overstraining themselves. It takes into consideration the different situation man finds himself in and the condition he faces in different environments. The faith itself is based on concepts which are easy to grasp. A single God, none like Him. He has created everything. He has guided everything to realize the purpose of its existence. He has also sent messengers to remind people of their roles in life and to call them back to their Lord who has created them. All obligations imposed by this faith fit in perfectly together. There are no conflicts, no contradiction. People have to fulfill this obligation according to their abilities. There need not be no overstraining, no heavy burden. If I give you an order, fulfill it as much as you can, but leave off what I forbid you. Prohibition may be also relaxed, save under the compulsion of necessity. This basic principle provides the limit within which the Islamic commandments and principles operate. Hence, the messenger and the message have this basic feature, easy nature, in common. So does the nations of Islam. The easy message built. It is a middle nation, merciful, the recipient of divine mercy, easy-natured, and enjoys a life which is perfectly harmonious with the wider existence in the universe. The universe itself, with its perfect harmony, provides a true picture of how Allah's creation moves easily and smoothly, without clash or crash. Millions of stars move in their orbits in the great space Allah has provided, each with its own gravity, yet none moves one step out of step and none crashes against another. There are millions of living creatures, each moving through life to its appointed aim, near or distant, according to a perfect plan. Each is given the abilities which make its aim easy to achieve. Millions and millions of movements, events and conditions come together, then go their separate ways, yet they are much the same as the sound of the different instruments in an orchestra, so different but combined to give together a beautiful tune. In short, perfect harmony exists between the nature of the universe, the message, the messenger, and the Islamic nation. They are all the creations of Allah, the One, the Most Wise. Give warning, therefore, if warning is of use. Allah has taught him to read and not forget, smooth his way to perfect ease, so that he may be able to discharge his great task, namely to warn. For this, he has been the subject of careful preparation. Hence, he is asked to warn whenever he has a chance to address people and to convey to them Allah's message, if warning is of use. Warning is always useful. There will always be in every land, in every generation, those who will listen to the reminders and warning and will benefit from them, no matter how corrupt the society is and how hardened their people are. If we ponder a little over the verses in this surah and their sequence, we realize the greatness of the message entrusted to the Prophet. convey it and to give the warning he is asked to give, he needs special equipment, a smooth way to perfect ease in everything, to be taught, to read, and Allah's preservation of the message intact. Once the Prophet has conveyed his message, his task is fulfilled. Everyone is left to choose his way. Their destinies differ according to their choice of the way they follow. He who fears Allah will heed it, but the most wretched will turn aside from it. He shall be cast into the greatest fire, in which he neither dies nor lives. Prosperous is he who purifies himself and glorifies the name of his Lord and prays. The Prophet is told here that his warnings will benefit him who fears Allah and fears his punishment. Any intelligent man will feel a shudder in his soul as soon as he learns that there is a Creator who proportions well, determines and guides, for he realizes that such a Creator must hold every man responsible for his action, good or evil, and will reward him accordingly. Hence, he fears and heeds the warning when he is warned. But the most wretched will turn aside from it. If a man does not listen to the warning given, then he is absolutely the most wretched. He lives in a void, uninspired by the facts surrounding him, turning a deaf ear and a senseless mind to the evidence they give. Such a person lives in constant worry, striving hard to attain the paltry pleasures of this world. Hence, he is the most wretched in this life, for he is also the most wretched in the hereafter as he suffers their endless torment. He shall be cast into the greatest fire, in which he shall neither die nor live. The greatest fire is that of hell. It is indeed the greatest of all fires in intensity, duration and size. He who suffers it finds it endless. He neither dies or rests from its torment, nor does he live in it a life of rest and security. It is a never-ending agony which makes the sufferer yearn for death as his greatest hope. At the other end, we find prosperity accompanied with self-purification and heeding of the warnings. Prosperous is he who purifies himself and glorifies the name of his Lord and prays. Purification is used here in the widest sense of the word. Purification from everything filthy or sinful. The person who seeks to purify himself glorifies his Lord, feels his power and majesty in his innermost soul and prays, whether taken in this general sense or its special Islamic sense, will definitely be prosperous. As Allah states here, he will be prosperous here in this life as he enjoys his relationship with Allah and the perfect bliss that result from his glorification of Allah. He will also be prosperous in the hereafter as he escapes hell and is rewarded with perfect happiness in paradise. How different the two destinies are. Having sketched the two different ends of the most wretched and the God-fearing, the surah points out to the addressees the real reason for their great wretchedness, the failing which drives them headlong into the greatest fire. Yet you prefer this present life, while the life to come is better and longer lasting. This short-sighted preference for the present life is the real reason for every misery which befalls man. It is indeed the cause of man's taking no heed of the warnings given to him. The Qur'an calls the present life dunya, which connotes both contemptuousness and ease of access. The life to come is better in kind and duration. Only the foolish who are deprived of sound judgment would, in the circumstances, prefer the present life to the next. In conclusion, the surah points out that the message of Islam is not new. Its roots go back far deep in time. All this is surely written in earlier scriptures, the scriptures of Abraham and Moses. The basics of the grand faith contained in this surah are the same old basic facts outlined in the ancient scriptures of Abraham and Moses. The truth is one and the faith is one. This results from the fact that your origin is one, Allah, whose will it was to send messengers to mankind. The messengers deliver basically the same message, the same simple truth. Details of the messages may differ according to local or temporal needs, but the basics are the same. They have one origin, Allah the Most High, who creates, proportions wealth, determines, and guides. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Ya Fattah, Ya Razak, Ya Fattah, Ya Razak, Ya Wahab, Ya Ghani, Ya Mughni, Ya Qadim, Ya Daim, Ya Ahad, Ya Wahid, Ya Samad, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum, Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum, Ya Rabb, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram, Ya Rabb, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram, Ya Rabb, Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram.